There's a little sign somebody's left for somebody on this gate. Hello, Adrian. Hello, Adrian, whoever you are. I'm in a place called Stoke Dabenham today. I'm taking a walk before an event I'm going to. A short photo walk is all that's really required, because as you'll find out soon, it's a different kind of week this week. Let's make a sketchbook picture of where I am. It's not going to be big and clever, this one, that's for sure. But I'll make a picture anyway. What have we got? It's just the gate in front of me. F4, 320 ISO, 1/2/5. Slightly different angle, perhaps, to try and make it a bit more interesting. Shoot past this bush here. There we go. Sketchbook picture to start the day.
Going round and round, it was like being in a washing machine. And the next thing, I woke up and I was lying on my back with a stretcher across me and a helicopter full of smoke.
That's Paul Berriff. Just a snippet of what's to come on this show, where you'll hear lots of Paul and less of me, which seems the right way around. It's one of our interview and narrative weeks this week. The interview with a photographer and filmmaker called, yes, Paul Berriff, and the narrative being the colour bits in between to tell the story of the extraordinary things that Paul has done with his life creatively and otherwise. The mailbag will be back next week. So let me paint a picture for you, or describe what's about to happen, although there's, as Paul puts it, a real sting in the tail at the end. Now, I decided to make it interview rich this week because there are two stories that start about midway through that were, well, A, not planned at all. I mean, I'd planned to ask questions about what we talk about, and B, it's a real stream of consciousness from Paul, which I think is fascinating to hear. So when I came to the editing part of what I do for each episode, it really did not take long to consider that editing my chat with Paul into its normal 45-50 minutes-ish or so length would take the very essence from what he had to say about his involvement as a filmmaker in 9/11 and this cruel to safety that he describes after both towers effectively collapsed around and on him. Plus, without it being too much of a spoiler, he goes on to talk about a rescue that he took part in on a cliffside in a rain and storm swept scene that almost cost him his life for a second time, although not in that order historically. In fact, as you're about to find out, it's a theme in Paul's life, one that you'll hear, well, he has a rather unusual approach and reaction to, which I try to address in one of my colour pieces in between the interview with him, because not long into our conversation, we talk about being on the first rescue helicopter to arrive at the Piper Alpha oil platform in the 80s for that disaster that's gone down in history as, I think, possibly the worst oil platform disaster. And then being on board another aircraft that came down on the side of a hill that once again he somehow managed to crawl free from. I think at times this interview feels like going out for a coffee on a wild wintry day, being sat in the corner, just nursing two massive mugs of the stuff, and me saying something like, right, Paul, just tell me the kinds of things that have happened in your life, and then I keep quiet to just let him go, really. And perhaps because this week I've been on a writing course where a stream of consciousness was, if not a theme, certainly a sub-theme of the physical writing exercises we did, I think maybe this interview in some way echoes that approach. Perhaps that was on my mind. As a photographer, Paul's Beatles photos from the 60s are in major collections around the world. They're some of the most natural pictures ever made of the boys, because when he made them, including bands like the Rolling Stones, these bands, these acts, hadn't quite reached the fame that they soon would. As a filmmaker, which he switched to from photography, he simply took that natural approach he had to storytelling, and with a clockwork camera, I'm being genuine here, as he called it, and only minutes of a reel in which to make a story, he started gathering news, first for the BBC, and then soon enough for his own very successful production company. And if that's not enough in one life, he's a rescuer, in terms of having completed training as a firefighter and made 850 sea rescues as a member of the RNLI. So I think this reasonably soft-spoken, measured man with the most unusual approach to danger is quite the force of, well, I was going to say nature, quite the force of nature, but I might say humanity instead.
Today on the Photo Walk.
I've always been on the front line. I like dealing with split-second decisions, making a decision, and often where lives are at stake. I like doing that, and I like recording it at the same time. I was clearing the attic out one day, and I found this box, an old Kodak print box, and on it said Beatles. I thought, oh, what's this? And I looked in it, and I found all these negatives of the Beatles and all these other groups. I'd only been filming behind a film camera for 6 months when I made that, and I won the Documentary of the Year award, and that was a great boost for me. The BBC guys I was working for in Leeds said, "Don't go, it's too dangerous." I said, well, there you are, there's a great film to be made there. I was knocked out for about 30 minutes. The next thing, I'm crawling. I can see these strange lights, and I'm crawling. I never want to retire. I don't want to sit back in a chair and just look out of the window.
That's Paul Berriff, my guest on the Photo Walk show today. It's an interview-rich show today for, well, the reasons I just shared. And I sense that, stand by for an overused word. Is it the J word, Neil? Is it the J word? Yes, it is. This is one of our real journeys in terms of thoughts and stories. And as I say, a twist at the end of the story. Before we start, though, I want to personally thank those who are Patreon members of our community, our extra milers, as you'll know, because your belief in this show and your desire to keep us walking together year on year is the very why and the very how of this podcast. Every week, there's 5 extra shows available through Patreon. The Extra Mile, which is today's show, Friday, which features interviews or further part of an interview with a guest, and also during the week, the Monday to Friday Reflections. So there's plenty to listen to on the Extra Mile channel. All you have to do is go to photowalk.show and click the Support the Show button in the top right-hand corner if you want to be a member. Thank you also to my sponsor, arthelper.ai. Now, they help you to sell your photos online by making posts and mock-ups and marketing emails for you. So if you have ever thought, I'd like to sell my work, but I haven't got a clue where to start, you would not be alone. arthelper.ai, they jump in and do the tricky bits for you. And you can get 30 days free with the code PHOTOWALK when you go to arthelper.ai. So we'll do some housekeeping. Then it's straight into my conversation with Paul Berriff. But I'm hoping you'll still be walking as you listen, as we make our photo walks across the world together, making pictures of what we see and experience. Right, checklist out. Coffee, check. Garibaldi's, check. Walking boots, check. Have you got some spare film or maybe an extra SD card, or, following last week, a spare battery? Check. Let's walk. I'm wondering, it's a brisk day. I'm wondering how long this sign has been here as I walk along this path before I introduce Paul to you. Because the words, what does that say? Blundell Lane is that way, Stoke Dabenham. Oh, that's where I've come from, the other way. But they've been washed away. Just, how long has this sign been here? There we go. Another sketchbook picture. No letters this week. They're back next week, where I think we'll be talking about football. But don't fear. Oh no, Neil, I'm not really into football. Don't worry, because it's actually, it's an interesting discussion that does take in football, But it's a show about passion and storytelling, despite swimming against the tide of those with green eyes, big green eyes, if that's the right expression. That's next week. Now, I need to do some housekeeping as I navigate the mud. I'm moving further away from the road noise in the background. Good. Sounds of nature. The M25 is just over the brow of that hill, which is a reasonably busy road, the orbital around London. Yes, some housekeeping, because once we start today, we just go all the way through with Paul's stories. So, first of those, last call for the assignment, which we're now furiously we're happily uploading. I'm happily uploading your pictures under the theme Grounded, which was set by the travel photographer Liza Gershman. So to take part, go to the website, hit the assignments tab, and there you'll find how to take part, if you don't know already, of course. And you can do the same for The One, which is also a tab on the website. Your biggest picture of 2025, the picture that's made a difference to your life. As I said last week, it doesn't have to be a perfect picture. It could be something that's, for you it was just a moment that encapsulates 2025. Maybe a big family event, maybe something that happened to you, maybe something you saw, a massive landscape, or not so massive. I don't know. It's open, isn't it, to complete interpretation what your big picture from 2025 might have been. So that's The One. And if you go to the website, look for the tab that says The One, and you'll find all the rules of how to send your pictures in as well. Your picture, it's just one picture. And next, travel. I can't believe that if all those who've shown an interest in Venice go through the final booking process, which people are starting to do, I think we're going to be full. And India is now officially full for March. One place I think left for Mongolia, perhaps a couple in September. But yes, there's still a few places too for our special trip to Scotland this June, first week of June. So go to the website and you'll find Scotland 26. We're embracing a few different things this year. We've done creative writing before, but we're going to do that with our usual forest bathing, which is it's like meditation with a pencil. But we're changing it up just slightly. So if writing is something you've thought, I'd like to work on that a bit with my photography, then we'll be doing that. We'll be doing a bit more on sound, and we're doing photogravure, which is a wonderful, I was going to say meditation, or perhaps not. It's a very physical wonderful printing process to make one of possibly two of your biggest pictures of your life come alive in a way that you've never seen them before. So that's Scotland. And then bring fanfares for this one. Our first physical book is now on the website. Yes, photowalk.show. We found a way to print this to the quality we'd like for an international audience. And I say we because I've been working on this very hard with Neil Ford, who has, he's been the process of this book. Who would have known he was a designer in a publishing company? Yes, Neil Ford, man of many, many talents. So yeah, we found this way to get this out to an international audience, and that's important. It's the Book of Why, a sketchbook of life. There's a revised edition now. You can still buy it as an ebook, but now you can have it in print. And that's on the website under the natty heading, Book, which will soon become pluralized books, as I'm in the final stages of editing some new stories to go with my favorites from the Reflection series you hear on Mondays here, but all week on the Patreon channel, The Extra Mile. There are some new personal stories that haven't aired as well, so that'll be in that book. What's that plane? I know. I'm under the flight path for Gatwick. Can't see it though. Clouds are a bit low today. We like to play this game at home. Where's the plane going? I think it's going to Oh, somewhere warm. I don't know why Ibiza. It's been a theme of the week for me, for reasons that those that listen to Reflections will know. Maybe it's going to Ibiza. Sunnier climes, anyway. So both books are a way to support the show, because without your help, this weekly show, or 5 times a week, actually, Extra Mile, could not exist. So enjoy the show in print for the first time. Right, to my guest, Paul Berriff. Now, Paul has made a lot of very physically daring films. That will become obvious as he talks. A courageous man, very physical in his methods of seeing and creating images. He has a real curiosity. Werner Herzog said that, the international film director. Praise indeed. During his filming exploits, Paul has survived a major helicopter crash, leapt to safety from a sinking ship during a North Sea gale, and escaped death when a volcano erupted around him in Nicaragua. On September the 11th, Paul Berriff was filming with the Fire Department of New York's Deputy Chief Fire Commissioner at the World Trade Center when both the Twin Towers collapsed. Pretty much on top of him, as you'll find out in the story. Now, Paul was knocked unconscious and for between 25 and 30 minutes before regaining consciousness and physically crawling, dragging himself out of the debris. His camera was smashed, but his tape showing the iconic sequences of the South Tower collapsing survived. Paul is a British and international documentary filmmaker as well as a fine art photographer. We don't even touch on that. He's created, produced, directed and been behind the camera on over 180 prime-time major network television documentary films. Many people would need 3 or 4 lives to fit in what Paul has managed to do in his so far. We don't touch on the half of it. We really don't. So when our conversation concluded, I asked Paul if I could possibly, in the next few months, head over to his part of the world and record a walking and talking special, which fortunately he said yes to. So there is more to come about so much more than than what you're about to hear today. What's that in the background? Tell me that. Can you hear that? Is it a steam train? Look at that! Oh, I can't quite photograph it through the bushes there. Oh, marvellous. Well, I don't see that when I'm photographing the Pinstriped Express usually. Sorry, Paul. Well, my guest today is Paul Berriff. Paul, before the expeditions, the various dangers we're going to talk about, there was a young photographer pointing a camera at the biggest musicians of the 60s. Some of those photographs now, I mean, are there moments where you think, oh, I can't believe I was doing that. I was with these people. I was part of this history.
Yes, I mean, it was a historical moment, but at the time, I think I was in my mid-teens when I did it, when I took the photographs. And I was working on the Yorkshire Evening Post in Leeds, just as a trainee photographer working in the darkrooms. And I'd always carried a camera with me, and I used to go around Leeds taking photographs of this, that, and the other. And then suddenly, in that period, the pop generation burst upon us. So being a teenager myself, I really, lapped all this up. You know, these groups are coming on stream every week.
Yeah.
All the cinemas, and certainly in my part of the world up here in Yorkshire. So I decided to go along and, get access with the theatre managers backstage to take pictures. Not for publication, but for my own use, really. I had a Rolleiflex camera, and I was just using it to practice my light skills, my aperture skills, and all that sort of thing. And I decided to use the pop groups as like an essay to practice this on. And at the time, these groups were not as famous as they are now. And the first group I met were the Beatles at the Odeon in Leeds in 1963. So I snapped away at that, and then the Rolling Stones came and various other people. And in fact, I met the Beatles, I think, on 7 occasions over that 63, 64.
I mean, you're very modest because the CEO of the Beatles store in Liverpool called your photographs, and I quote, "the best I've seen of the Beatles at that time."
That's right, he did.
Yeah.
After I'd taken all these pictures of 63, 64, I actually became an official press photographer.
Yeah.
And all those sort of pictures that I'd taken of the Beatles, Marianne Faithfull, Rolling Stones, etc., went into a folder and into a cardboard box and then ended up in my attic. And it was 40 years later when I discovered these, when I done my stint as a press photographer, then I became a television news cameraman and then into documentaries.
Yeah.
That I actually found these in the attic of my cottage up here in North Yorkshire, and I was clearing the attic out one day, and I found this box, an old Kodak print box, and on it said Beatles. I thought, oh, what's this? And I looked in it, and I found all these negatives of the Beatles and all these other groups.
Incredible.
I knew I'd taken pictures of the groups back then, but I didn't know I got this treasure trove of images.
Well, some of these limited editions are collected by the world's leading musicians.
That's right.
And I wonder what were you managing to see that others weren't, that's really piqued curators' interests?
I don't know, Neil. I mean, I sort of obviously got an eye for photography, but again, back then I was doing what we call available light photography. I didn't use flash guns or anything. I like available light, and a lot of the pictures that you've probably seen on my website are available light. I had a medium format Rolleiflex camera and a 35mm Nikon camera, which I've still got and I still use them. And I was just using the Beatles and the other rock groups as a subject rather than superstars that they became, because they weren't then.
No.
And people keep asking me now, oh, what was it like meeting them? I said, well, just like meeting anybody else, really.
At that time, yeah.
And I got to know Paul McCartney quite well. He was the most forthcoming of all of them. He every time I met Paul, he said, how's your photography coming along, Paul? I said, oh, very well. I didn't dare say, how's your music coming along, Paul? Because already the Beatle mania had started to come in back then.
He does love his photography, actually. He's a bit of a photographer himself, isn't he?
Yeah. Paul did photography with his wife and things, and I've seen quite a few of it, but I prefer his music to photography, really.
So how come this changed then? So because you were a press photographer, there was that avenue that you could have very successfully gone walking into the sunset with, but then the BBC came calling.
Yes, I think it was about 67, 68. I was taking photographs for the paper of the Moors murderers. I was on that for the whole period from the arrest to them being sentenced, etc. But I was up on Saddleworth Moor, which was on our patch in Yorkshire.
Very grim.
For many weeks on all the searches and everything. Yeah. So I that was probably one of my last jobs. And I was there when somebody from the BBC approached me and said that they were setting up a new television newsroom in Leeds, covering the whole of the north of England for the national news in London. Would I like to join them as a movie cameraman? Well, movies really are a series of still pictures joined together. And with a paper, I could only get one of my pictures used on each story. But here I was now being offered a job as a cameraman. And so I said yes. So I left the newspaper world, and I think it was 67, 68. I think became the youngest cameraman at the BBC. I was only about 21 years of age. So I started running around the north of England for the network news, which was absolutely fantastic.
That must have been an incredible time, right there at the start of something pretty new.
Oh, it was fantastic. I mean, I keep saying to colleagues, we had the best time in our career at the BBC, and it was when the BBC was in its heydays with the great news teams and reporters and all over the world. And it was great working there, and I owe a lot to them, because that's where I actually grew up in filmmaking with the BBC, and I enjoyed every minute of it, really.
Were you known as I know these days often that position is known as a director of photography, not necessarily in news, I know, but was that essentially what you were?
Yeah, I mean, I was my own boss, so I would be given an assignment, and I would go out with my clockwork Bolex film camera back in those days. You just have to wind it up.
No.
And each take was maximum just under 20 seconds.
Right.
So I couldn't have a shot longer than 20 seconds, and I had to wind it up. And the Clockwork Bolex camera had a reel of film in it, which was 2.5 minutes. And I was only allowed one reel of film on each story. So I had to tell the story in 2.5 minutes, which means whatever you're doing, you have to get the right shots exposed correctly and everything. It's not like video. You have to get it absolutely right and tell the whole story in 2.5 minutes. So having spent 2-3 years on television news, that was a great grounding for me, because I'm directing it, I'm selecting my own shots and everything, and I have to tell the story from beginning to end. So that was a great grounding for me.
So it wasn't in essence like having a journalist stood in front doing a piece to camera. The sound was being added on later in editing suites?
No, I was known as a mute cameraman.
Ah, right.
A sound comes after that. So there was me, I was the mute cameraman, and then they had another cameraman who was a sound, and he would go with a reporter and a bigger camera with sound on it.
Right.
So they would go and do what we call the pieces to cameras, you know.
Yeah.
But for general major news stories, I would be there first, filming all of the action. And then that's how it all started, really, for me.
I have heard it suggested that that television liked to hire photographers because our eyes are pretty well honed.
Yes, again, I was lucky because I spent a year in the darkrooms first developing my photographs. So I did all the wet developing, a developer, stop pass and fixer. So I learned all the background to photography in the darkrooms before I even went out with a camera officially.
Yeah.
I was doing my own pictures, as you know, with the Beatles, etc. But I was in the darkrooms learning the whole trade. So I've actually gone from learning all the aspects of photography from the darkrooms right up to what I do now. So it was quite a great learning curve being a photographer first.
Yeah.
And going on big news stories and learning about news and what to photograph and not to photograph, etc., etc. So when I went into television news, that was simple, really, for me. I had an eye for news. I knew what news was about, and I'd already put pictures together of news stories. So here I was with a movie camera, which was a godsend, really, because I could actually film away everything I thought was really useful in news footage. So yes, the photography background was good. So I've gone right from there right up to the present day when we're into all this digital stuff and everything else. So I've been through all the different changes. So I started with a clockwork camera. Then I went into a sound camera. And back then, the sound on the cameras, we were using big American, what they call Oricon cameras, with the reels on the top.
Yeah, huge, great things. Yeah.
The massive, heavy things.
Yeah.
On my shoulder. But on the 16mm film, on the side of one side of the sprockets, there was a magnetic track. So the sound recorders would be recording sound, and the sound would be plugged into the microphones, would be plugged into the camera, and it would record on what we call stripe film. So when we took the sound film back to the film editor, he'd run it through the machine and the sound would come up from the actual film itself. And then we went into what we call set mag. My camera was synced with a tape recorder, and then we put a clapperboard on it. And then that's how they would sync the film with the sound, and so on and so forth. And then the video age came, and then the big video cameras, which I avoided. I probably was one of the last persons at the BBC documentaries department to still use 16mm film.
Oh, there's still plenty of filmmakers today in Hollywood, for example, that still prefer to use film. I still prefer film of anything. Well, what does it give it then, Paul? How does it feel different to you as a filmmaker?
Film looks at life like our eye looks at life, but the new video cameras now, the high definition 4K and above stuff that the movie makers make and television drama are really as good as film. In fact, they're better because they can expose dark areas where you would have to light in the old days with film. Now you can go in and make a movie without any lights at all, basically, and it looks absolutely fantastic. And I love watching all that. I wish in my time we'd had those sort of cameras around. I mean, I used to. Most of my documentaries have been on 60mm film cameras, and a lot of my stuff, as you probably know, has been action photography. And I've got to hang out of helicopters and on lifeboats and everything with these bloody cameras. Which now you've got a little GoPro or something not much bigger that you can capture all that on in it.
Oh yeah, but
I do wish some of the new technology was around then. But we really learnt the craft using the cameras, and even the bigger cameras only had a span of 9 minutes per roll of film in them. So it was fascinating.
You moved from I'd call it structure of the BBC into running your own independent production company. You were still quite young when you did that.
I formed the first ever independent production company in the UK.
So why make that leap? Because some would say once you're in the BBC machine, you're sorted for life. But you didn't.
No, well, I wanted to go off and do my own thing.
Yeah.
And I joined the BBC back when I was 21 doing television news, but within 6 months of me working for television news, I heard about an expedition of kayakers that were going to run the Colorado River through the Grand Canyon. And it had never been done before. And I thought, wow, this sounds like a great movie. So I took 4 weeks off, 4 weeks leave from television news and went there with a producer from London and my clockwork camera and a separate sound tape cassette recorder. And I made this documentary of these kayaks and rafts running the Colorado River for the first time through an amazing rapids, and what a fantastic backdrop it was with the canyon walls on both sides. Yeah. And I won the Film of the Year award with it. And I'd only been filming behind the film camera for 6 months when I made that, and I won the Documentary of the Year award. And that was a great boost for me. The BBC guys I was working for in Leeds said, "Oh, don't go, it's too dangerous." I said, "Well, there you are. There's a great film to be made there."
Adventure and danger seems to follow you through your CV.
How I see things, Neil, is I want to know more about subjects, a bit more about this, a bit more about that, and I find subject that interests me, and I find that the public would like to know more about. So that's how I knock on the doors of these organisations. Says, "Can I come and make a film about you?" And I've been a pioneer in all the action films that you see nightly on television. I made the first ever police series in Leeds. And I got about 8-9 million viewers per night for that, and that was for Channel 4, and so on and so forth. And I spent a year with the police in Leeds, at Britain's busiest police station, 24 hours a day.
But a lot of the material that you've made does involve a certain amount of danger. I mean, on your Instagram, you don't have to look very far until you find a helicopter on its side. And I think your quote was, "You've lived 9 lives."
I'm also a lifeboat man. I founded and run which is Britain's busiest lifeboat on the Humber Estuary, and I've been doing that for some time. And we were working with the RAF helicopters a lot on rescues, and I thought, no one's ever made a film about the RAF search and rescue. So I found the busiest station in the UK run by the RAF, which was up in Lossiemouth in Scotland. And I thought, I'd like to go up and make a series. And I'd done some research, and it was one of the busiest stations in the country, covering all the Cairngorms and all the Scottish mountains, the islands, and the most treacherous part of the North Sea. So I wrote a proposal together, and Scottish television picked it up and said, we'd like to do this with you for ITV, and we made a 13-part series, and that was the first time that anybody had worked with any rescue organisation as such on the front line. And I spent 12 months there with 2 crews day and night, and ITV said, why do you want to spend all that time there? I said, because if you go for 2 or 3 weeks like most people do, you're not going to get it. You got to wait for a year. And it ended up being the busiest year ever for the RAF at that particular station.
My guest today is Paul Berriff, a filmmaker who worked in many places reached mainly or only by helicopter. One such place being the Piper Alpha oil platform in the North Sea. Built in the mid-70s, it was one of the most productive oil platforms in British waters. But on the 6th of July, 1988, everything changed. A routine maintenance job meant one of the gas pumps was offline and a safety valve was removed. Gas leaked, ignited, and the first explosion tore through the rig.
More than 170 men are still missing after an explosion and fire on the North Sea oil platform Piper Alpha.
More than 160 deaths puts the Piper Alpha platform high among Britain's worst energy disasters.
Most of those who died were sleeping in the accommodation blocks on the rig. There was simply no warning and no time to instigate any evacuation procedures.
I was on the first rescue helicopter to get there, and back then there was no mobile phones filming anything, and my footage was the only footage that was captured that night there from the helicopter and all the helicopter rescues. And then further on during the course of the filming, we were in the Cairngorms on an exercise with the mountain rescue team from Fort William. And our helicopter lost an engine, and I was sitting in the back of the helicopter, and the pilot came on board and said, "We're going down." And I looked out of the window and saw the ground coming up very quickly. And the next thing, there was a bang and a crash, and I remember everything going round and round. It was like being in a washing machine. And the next thing, I woke up and I was lying on my back with a stretcher across me and the helicopter full of smoke. And we'd actually crashed on one of the high mountains in the Cairngorms and rolled about 3/4 of a mile down the hill, and it caught fire. And none of us inside the helicopter at the time all escaped. I was the last one out. As you say, one of my near-death experiences, of which I've had 4. I don't know what's coming up next.
Are you naturally a risk taker then? Is it something that?
Not really. No. I mean, as I say, I've been trained in firefighting. I am a qualified lifeman. I've got multiple awards for rescues and various other things. So I've always been on the front line. I like dealing with split-second decisions, making a decision, and often where lives are at stake. I like doing that, and I like recording it at the same time. But again, when life's at stake, if I'm filming it and there are not enough emergency people there to help with the situation, I will put the camera down and go in and wade in or whatever and help. So I've got all those skills. I work with the military a lot, work with the police a lot, the fire department. So I know the subject. You know, I can look at a fire and see when the smoke's changing colour, what's going to happen and everything like that. So I've had the privilege of these people letting me into their lives because they know of my background and what I've done before, which has been fantastic. And I think that was one of the reasons that NASA let me into their world, because it's seen what I'd done before.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. We've gone for main engine start. We have main engine start. And the shuttle has cleared the tower.
When Paul turned his attention to space, he stepped into a world that rarely opened its doors to outsiders. During the early years of the shuttle era, NASA ran a tight ship. Astronauts were national figures, crews trained for years, and the agency guarded both their time and their privacy. Access to families was limited, filming controlled. Which is why Paul's presence inside that orbit of training rooms and homes and launch pads matters. His work exists because NASA, unusually, trusted him to witness the pressure, the waiting, and the small human moments that most of the world never sees. Your access to NASA for the shuttle series was pretty much unprecedented, wasn't it?
Yes. Like all of us, I in those early days, I'd watch the shuttle taking off, and you'd see the astronauts going into their truck and going to the actual space shuttle itself, climbing on board it. You see a long shot of it taking off. It shoots off up into space, and the next thing you see all the astronauts waving, in space. And then the next thing, you see the shuttle landing. I thought, interesting. There's more to it than that. So I contacted NASA and said, look, I'd like to make a film about you. And they said, why? And I explained that that's what I'd seen. And I said to them, I'm sure there's more than that to being a shuttle astronaut. And they said, yes. So they invited me across to Houston, and I had this meeting with all the top NASA people on a big round table. And there I was, this lad from Yorkshire, trying to convince them to let me into their world. Anyway, I said what I've just said to you, and they said, right, you've got it. And I was in. And I don't think any American film company or film producer or director in factual terms has been allowed backstage, and I lived with the families as well as the astronauts while they were doing all the training, and that was an absolutely fantastic experience to work with these amazing people.
I wonder what the families were like. How did you find them after the shuttle had lifted?
Well, they were very, I wouldn't say apprehensive, but, when I was filming them, there'd already been the Challenger disaster, so they knew what could happen if things go wrong. But they were all sort of quite laid back about it, really. And I was with them at the moment that the shuttle took off, and I was on their faces as it went off the launch pad in Florida there. The children were with it, their children were with them, and one of them said, well, will this be okay? And the mother said, yes, they're going to be fine. Nothing's going to happen. I mean, I should imagine that the parents were very concerned and, is it going to get off or isn't it going to get off? And there was a relief once it took off from the launch pad and got up there. But no, they were all very, very nice people. And it was one of the best years of my career, I think, living with them and seeing how the whole operation worked there at NASA.
How did the crew work with your crew, film crew I'm talking about? Was it a large film crew by then?
No, there was just three of us. There was just three of us. There was myself, an assistant, and a sound recordist. And a production assistant, and there's like just 3 or 4 of us, and that was it.
Has the industry stayed that sort of way?
No, it hasn't. I mean, again, luckily, back then when television, we didn't have all these multiple channels, there was enough money to pay for a crew on location for a long period. I mean, a year's a long time, and like with the helicopter series in Scotland, there was 2 film crews for 12 months. Hell, they wouldn't give you that now. But that was the only way to capture the full story, is to get embedded with these people. And, we become part of the team, and that's how you get your best footage, really. And it's a shame now that lots of these documentaries can't be made because the television companies don't have the cash to make them, which is a shame. I mean, I can see stories now that I'd love to have gone to Gaza and places and a lot of the war situations and spend time there, get embedded with a team and just live with them for some time. I mean, a few years ago, I was just thinking about going to Ukraine and living with a fire station there, for 6 months or so. I mean, that would have been a cracking movie. Nobody's ever done that yet. But you need time and money, and unfortunately now the television companies don't seem to have the budgets to let us spend time on location like that.
Another story that's... I have a friend of mine who was photographing 9/11. He was very lucky. He ran up Vesey Street, I think it was, with a camera behind his back, photographing as one of the towers came down. You were underneath the towers, weren't you?
I was near Vesey Street, yeah.
Why were you there at the time?
Right, I was in New York making a film about the equivalent of the RSPCA here. It's the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, the ASPCA. Back in 1960, I made a television series with an RSPCA inspector in Leeds called Sid Jenkins, and it was called Animal Squad, and it was about an inspector covering the whole of Yorkshire, going out to deal with reports of complaints of people being abusive to their animals, etc., etc. And I got a 6-part series on BBC One at 9 o'clock on a Monday night. And my audience figures every week were between 14 and 16 million viewers for each program. They were only 30 minutes long, and I did about 6 or 8 programs, I think. And that actually knocked the famous Dallas series out of the top 10. And the head of television documentaries at the BBC, I remember, bought me a bottle of champagne at the BBC bar for that achievement. So that was quite a thrill for me as well. So years after that, I found that there was this team in New York City doing a similar thing, but unlike the RSPCA, these guys were all tooled up with guns and goodness knows what. They looked like American NYPD cops. And they would go out and deal with the subject, arrest the perpetrators, take the animals back to the shelter, look after the animals, make them better, while the perpetrators would be locked in prison on the day that we arrested. They go straight to prison. They don't do that here. They get fined 6 months later and told to be good boys, and you can't have an animal for 6 months. So these people over there were completely different. And that became a big hit series. I did that for the Discovery Channel, and it became a massive series. So I was there in New York in 2001 doing that series. We started in January, and then September the 11th came around. So we've been doing animals for quite a few months by then. And I was in the ASPCA office in Upper East Side, which was about 3 miles away from Lower Manhattan, where the World Trade Center was. I just arrived there, and it was about 8:45 in the morning, and somebody came into the office and said a plane had hit the World Trade Center.
We understand that a plane has crashed into the World Trade Center. We don't know anything more than that. We don't know if it was a commercial aircraft. We don't know if it was a private aircraft.
Another one just hit the building. Wow.
So I was in the office with my 2 crew, Upper East Side. I rang after I heard somebody came into the office and said the plane is at the World Trade Center. I rang my wife, who was with us on location, down in Lower Manhattan. I said, "Can you see what's going on? Well, I've had the planes at the World Trade Center." And she said, "No, but there's a lot of people running around and I can hear lots of sirens." I said, "Okay, I'll see you later," and put the phone down. And I went back into the room where my crew were and said, "I think we should go down to Lower Manhattan." And this was my news instinct taking over. Plane, World Trade Center. I thought, it smells a bit iffy, this. So again, we thought it was only a light aircraft. So we got in our Jeep and started driving down the east side of New York. There's a dual carriageway called the FDR Drive. And we started to drive down towards the World Trade Center. And after about 5 minutes, the towers came into view, and not one tower now was on fire. A second tower was on fire as well. So we knew it wasn't a Cessna, and it wasn't an accident. It was obviously deliberate. So we got nearer and nearer. And as we got down into Lower Manhattan, we could see little black dots appearing around the building with, myself and Lulu and Becky, my 2 recordists and assistant producer. I said, "What's that?" And as we were driving, we could see that it was people actually jumping. So we knew it was very, very serious. So we after about 5 minutes, we get down into Lower Manhattan, and everything and everybody's coming the other way. They're all running, people running up, black smoke coming over from the 2 towers. And we couldn't get any further. We got within a mile of the World Trade Center, but we couldn't get any further because of all the people running the other way and traffic coming the other way. So we ditched the Jeep and went on foot and made our way through all the back streets and alleys to the base of the World Trade Center. And as I got there, I was filming all this as I was going along. People shouting and screaming. I did a few, not interviews, but I captured quite a few of them shouting and screaming at the camera. And we eventually got there. And just as I arrived, Steve Gregory, the Assistant Fire Commissioner, arrived to set up the command post. And this was immediately under the South Tower in what's known as West Street. and he was going to be controlling the operation. So here I was with two blazing towers on fire with two aircraft, international aeroplanes in the building as well. So here I was with the fire chief, and with any program, you need a figure, you need a thread to carry the story through. And I thought, this, knowing what I know about fires, that this was going to go on for a day or two. It's a major, major disaster in all its causes. And so I went up to Steve Gregory and said, look, I'm a British film crew. Do you mind if we film you? He said, no, not at all. So there he was alongside me. And what was happening was all the fire units arriving on the scene were reporting to our position, and the officers there, Steve and the other officers, were sending the firefighters into either the North Tower and South Tower, which were only like 100 feet, 100 meters away from where we were.
Building 2, 93rd floor, northwest corner. Also in Building 1, 93rd floor, southwest corner, K. All right, I also have 2 World Trade, 105 floor, 60 people.
So we were filming all that for around 20 minutes. People were still jumping out of the buildings around me, but I didn't film any of that. I was concentrated on the firefighters and Gregory giving orders and listening to the radio messages and everything. And I was in the middle of a shot and filming Gregory recording all the units that were arriving and had arrived. And there's suddenly this large explosion. So I panned my camera around. It was only a small little video camera I got. Panned the camera around, looking through the viewfinder just to see the top of the tower, South Tower, peeling away like an umbrella opening. Oof, it was coming out over like that. And I stood there and started to film. Well, I was already filming Gregory, so the camera was still rolling. He and all the other senior officers shouted, run, 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 and they started to run down West Street. And I stood there with Lulu and my sound recordist, looking up at this, I think it was 250,000 tons of building coming down towards me. Now, I stood there for 2 seconds, 3 seconds. That's a long time when you've got that amount of building coming down towards you. And it was taking that time to come down. So I was there for about 2 seconds or so, looking through my very small viewfinder. And I suddenly thought, I think I should really move now. So I remember shouting to Lulu, Lulu, run, run, run. And we started to run down the street following where the firefighters had gone. They were about 20, 50 yards in front of me now, throwing off all their breathing apparatus and everything. But they were running down the street. I was running behind them with this terrific roar going on. I couldn't see the building coming down, but I could hear it. But I still had my little camera in my right hand filming all this. I kept it running. It was looking. It could see it, I couldn't. But I could hear this tremendous noise. Oh, it was just unbelievable. I can only equate it to if you were stood in the middle of the main runway Heathrow now, and all the jumbo jets and things coming over the top of you. That's what it was really like. And it was getting louder and louder and louder. And I think we'd gone about 100 yards. The camera was still filming, we were running. And the next thing I remember, the camera leaving my right hand in slow motion and everything goes black. The next thing, I'm crawling. I can see these strange lights and I'm crawling. And I thought that was quite instant, but in fact, I was knocked out for about 30 minutes. Something had hit me and I'd gone down. And I was lying there apparently when the North Tower came down on top of me as well. So after about 30 minutes, I remember crawling and crawling. I don't remember being knocked unconscious, but I do remember seeing these images of firefighters and strange lights in slow motion. So that must have been when I was unconscious. And I came to, and everything was completely black. My mouth, my eyes, my ears, my nose was full of all this gunge. It was like cement paste. Everything was very hot. I couldn't see. I couldn't really do anything. And I didn't know that the tower had actually collapsed, or in fact both towers had collapsed. All I remember was the top of the building that I'd seen through the viewfinder coming down towards me. So I started to crawl, and I suddenly thought, wow, I've done it this time, because I've been in all these other near misses. I didn't know what had actually happened, and I did feel as though I was going to die, because I was looking for air underground, and I was taught by firefighters that if you're in a smoke-filled room, a very thick smoke, a building on fire or in thick smoke, there's always 4 or 5 inches above the ground that's always got air there. So I was looking for this. There wasn't any that morning. There was nothing. It just blackness and this awful cement type dust, which was the dust cloud that would overcome everybody there. And I was trying to get this out of my mouth, and I was having difficulty breathing, and it was up my nose, in my eyes, and everything else. And I was thought my trousers were burning out. There was burning debris everywhere, and I started to crawl and crawl and crawl. And I did actually think, I'm not going to make this. I don't know what's happened, but it's very difficult, and I was having this breathing problem. So I kept crawling and crawling for about 2 or 3 minutes or so, and I remember waving my arms around, and I suddenly felt the side of a car, and I knew where I was then. I knew I was facing the river, because there was no cars parked on the main road where we'd got hit. That was a dual carriageway, but I knew that cars were parked on the side roads, and those side roads led down to the River Hudson. And I thought, if I follow these cars, it was pitch black still, these cars, I'll come to the river and try and get air and clean up and everything else. I got to car 3, and I ran my hand down the side of the car, and I remember feeling this body, and I felt it was a fire. I could feel the fireman's tunic and his breathing apparatus, and I remember shouting to him, "Can I use your air bottle? Can I use your air bottle?" He didn't reply, so he must have been, a casualty. Well, he was. So anyway, I kept going, and for another 3 or 4 minutes, everything's still black. I'm really hot and sweaty. Stuff's burning around me. I could hear noises of crashes and banging, and stuff still falling around me. After about 5 minutes of all this, the visibility started to clear, and I could see 20 and 30 yards. And after about 10 minutes, I stood up, and I thought, wow, I'm still alive. And everything had gone from colour to black and white with all the ash. The trees were bent over, and there was a smashed ambulance in front of me with its lights, red and white lights flashing on the roof, and it looked like a East Coast lighthouse in fog with it penetrating through all this debris, and that was quite eerie. And then suddenly I had this awful thought, and I started to shiver and shout, and "Where's Lulu?" My sound recorder, so I started screaming, "Lulu, where are you? Where are you?" Because being head of the unit, I was in charge of her safety, I suppose, and I was very concerned about where was she? So I thought, she's not with me. So I then backtracked and went back down the street that I've just crawled up. I was stood up now, but visibility was only about 15 yards, and I think I walked and scrambled over smashed cars and stuff that was still burning, and eventually got back to West Street where I thought we got hit, and I'm shouting, "Lulu, can you hear me? Can you hear me?" I'm shaking now and in a right state, and I suddenly see the top of her sound mixer in the debris. And I'm shouting, "Lulu, where are you?" And I couldn't see her. I couldn't see anybody. There was nobody anywhere. But I saw the top of the sound mixer, and I pulled that sound mixer up and put the strap around my neck. It was all smashed. And then underneath it, attached to it on a cable, was my smashed video camera. So I picked that up and looked at it. It was all in a right state with the front element lens hanging off and everything. To the right of me, a 34-story building was on fire from ground floor to top, well alight. All the fire trucks were on fire around me, and just about 100 yards in front of me, visibility hadn't lifted much, but I could actually see a bit. Parts of the building were embedded in the road, but I didn't know then that building had actually come down. In fact, I didn't know that either building had come down because the visibility was so thick. It was like a foggy November day that we used to have in England, and it was dense visibility. I'm still having difficulty breathing. I'm getting hotter and hotter. My clothes are in the right state, and I'm sweating and still worried about Lulu. Where is she? And I looked at my smash camera and sound recorder, and then looked at the view, and something said inside me, "Paul, you've crossed the line. Get out of there." And I turned around and started to make my way back down the road towards our apartment, which is only 2 blocks away, about 500 or 600, 700 yards from where I was at the time. And I actually crawled my way back with the camera and the sound machine, scrambled over burning cars and trucks and everything, and got back. It took me about a quarter of an hour, 20 minutes to get back to the lobby of our apartment block, and I walked in there, and this voice says, "Paul, there you are. We wondered where you were." And it was Lulu, my sound recordist. She had been grabbed by one of the senior fire officers, and they'd run into an underground garage and missed obviously a lot of the debris and things that hit me, and she made her own way back there. I'd been with her for about 2 or 3 minutes, and she said, "Paul, there's blood covering the back of your shirt," and that was the first time I knew I'd been injured. So the story goes on from there, but I'd actually survived it, and I was taken to hospital on Staten Island. They took me on the last ferry from New York, and they cleaned me up and everything, and I was released that day from hospital. But it was quite an amazing story. And what had happened with my wife, she was in the tower block, in our apartment block, 2 blocks away. After my phone call, she picked up our cat that we'd actually adopted from the ASPCA while we were filming the animals there. And she'd come down the fire escape at on the apartment block and gone into what's called Battery Park, which is a park just south of the Twin Towers and where we lived. Yeah. And she was there with all the crowd that had escaped, and they were watching the building on fire. And she was there when the second plane came above her, and it swerved to miss our tower block where we were living and hit the South Tower. And then she was there for another 20 minutes, and it started to collapse. So then she and all the other people that had escaped started to run out of the area, back up the FDR drive. And she was there with the cat running up to the South FDR drive with everybody, and the cloud was consuming them as well by this time. And she'd been ringing for about 5 or 10 minutes and decided, what? And said to herself, "Why am I doing this?" And she turned around with cat in its little box and made her way back to Lower Manhattan towards our apartment blocks while everybody was coming the other way. And as she got back to Battery Park, visibility was only about 1,500 yards. Everything was still covered in ash, and there was this great mist around. And then in the distance through all this, she saw a group of people in the park, just a small group of people. So she got closer towards them. She recognized, "Oh, that's Paul's film crew." And as she got nearer, she realized it was me on the stretcher. And that was the first time she even knew I was down there. She thought I was still up on the Upper East Side. So that's where we met, from that phone call I've made some hour or two earlier. So the story goes on and on from there, but I'm writing a book about all that, and I have an audio book now on Amazon called 9/11, Me, My Wife and Muffin, Our Cat.
and that's available now?
That's on the audiobook version. Yeah. It's what happened before the planes went in, during that day, and afterwards.
It's an extraordinary story, and I feel very privileged that you shared so much of it, and the rest of it is obviously within the audiobook and then the book. When it comes round to that time each year, I know my friend who I briefly introduced you to the start of your story. Yeah. I know that he feels and finds that a very difficult day. I would imagine the same for you?
I think people always ask me this. I'm a very strange person. I think because I've been, right from those early days when I used to go around Leeds with my still camera on my push bike following fire engines and police cars to crashes and things. I think I've been immersed in death quite a lot. I've been to plane crashes, murders, everything, and disasters all over the place, as you know. And I'm being a lifeboatman. I've been on over 850 lifeboat rescues.
Goodness.
And I'm used to dealing with bodies and picking people up and that sort of thing. And I think I must be, I don't know, I'm not, the word used to it is not the right word, but I think it's something that I've managed to teach myself to ignore the bad stuff I see and block it out of my mind. Even with 9/11, I've never had any nightmares or I've never dreamt about it at all. Even on that day, I went to bed that night and slept. And, you know, it hasn't affected me. I've got an ability to switch off from all that. And I would be a nervous wreck now, I think, if I'd let it take over me.
What does it tell you about other people's humanity then?
Well, again, most people that I've filmed that are in disasters or similar situations, it's the first time in life anything's happened to them. And like with yourself, suddenly something happens to you now.
Yeah.
Like that, I mean, it's quite a shock, but I don't even talk about it to my wife or anything. And I'm there as an observer recording events, and I do that, then I can just switch straight off. And, you know, I'm glad I've got that capability of doing that. Otherwise, I would be...
It's an extraordinary ability.
In an awful situation. But I think it only because looking at my life, way back to being a teenager in those early days, I think I've been exposed to it on a regular basis, and I know what to do in dangerous situations anyway. I think I've just become used to it, really, and it doesn't really bother me too much.
Hearing Paul talk about that filter he's developed, I find myself trying to imagine what it must take for a person to witness that much loss and still be able to stand, record, respond. Most of us have never been that close to danger or devastation, never had moments where feeling everything might make functioning impossible. So perhaps this distance he describes isn't coldness, as it might sound. Maybe it's the mind building something necessary in order to carry on. I kept coming back to the thought that we all cope differently. Some of us fall apart, some freeze, and some, like Paul, learn to work through the unthinkable by stepping back inside themselves just enough to keep going. I don't think that's indifference, it's survival, and I wonder whether that's what we're really hearing in Paul's voice. The Bravery Awards, the Royal Humane Society, Queen's Commendation, OBE, I know you're very proud of that, as you should be. They all stem from moments where you've intervened. It's an extraordinary ability that you have, isn't it?
I think it is, Neil. I think, again, running the lifeboat station as well has been quite interesting, but I brought to that experience what I've learned from all these other rescue organizations I work with around the world. And I mean, when I got the highest commendations and awards was for a rescue, not with my own lifeboat station, but with what I did with the RAF rescue helicopters. We got it was late October. We were scrambled to a sinking trawler off the northwest coast. A big storm had suddenly come in. The boat was sinking, so we were scrambled to go to that. And it was snowing quite heavily. And Lossiemouth's on the sort of northeast coast of Scotland, and this boat was on the northwest side, off the top bit of Scotland, top left corner, really, I call it. And the helicopter had to fly around the coast. It couldn't go straight across the country because of the weather conditions and the snow and everything else. And on the way around there, we got diverted to another call where they said 3 guys had been trapped on this rock stack. A rock stack is a stack of, the old man of Hoy.
Like a pillar.
A pillar, a rock pillar, yes. and this was called the Old Man of Stour, which is like the Old Man of Hoy, which
I know of it. Yeah.
Off Loch Inver on the northwest coast there. And what had happened, there was 3 climbers on top of this thing late afternoon when this big storm came in. The 3 of them had descended down this thing and was on the base. The rock stack was linked to the mainland with a rope, and they'd gone across holding onto this rope and then were trying to get back. By now the seas were rising rapidly. It was a force 10 gusting force 11 with heavy snow. So one of the 3 guys traversed across this rope, got back to the mainland, climbed up the 300-foot cliff on the mainland to raise the alarm. So we'd got scrambled to his call for help. He said there's 2 of my friends are trapped still on the rock stack on the base of it. So on the way round, we picked up the Ascent Mountain Rescue Team. They came on board the helicopter. When we got to the scene, the helicopter couldn't get near. We saw one boy at the base of the rock, still alive. We couldn't get near it because of the weather. It was gusting force 11, force hurricane, force 12, heavy snow. And the helicopter, because we'd done all the mileage around the north coast of Scotland, it was running low on fuel. So he dropped myself and my sound recordist and the mountain rescue team on top of the cliff facing the rock stack. And then he bailed out to Stornoway, about 40 miles away, to refuel. So here I am on top of this cliff face. The mountain rescue team abseiled down the mountain, down the cliffside, and I'm on top with my sound recorders. And I had a very powerful searchlight with me, and I shone it onto this figure on the bottom of the rock stack, and the water by now was up to his shoulder virtually.
Good Lord.
Big seas were rolling in. We couldn't see the other guy. Number 2 climber had started to follow his colleague across on the traverse rope, and there was a knot in the middle of the rope between the mainland, which is about 250 yards from the mainland to the rock stack, and he got stuck and he got hypothermia and drowned. Oh. So the body was there. So I'm on the top of the mainland cliff, 300 foot. So I had a radio, I had a dry suit on, life jackets, RAF life jackets with a life raft on it, radios, beacons, flash, all the paraphernalia you can have when you're in that sort of situation. So I radioed down to the mountain rescue team that had only got their climbing gear, anoraks and boots and things. They were not self-contained like me. I was waterproof, dry and waterproof. So I gave them a shout and said, look, it's Paul here. I'm the film crew, but I've been a Coast Guard, I'm also a lifeboatman. I've got all dry suit on, can I come down and help you? And he says, yes, please. So at that moment, I put my camera down, left my sound recorders there, and then I abseiled 300 foot down the cliff face to join the mountain rescue team. And I got to a little ledge at the bottom of the cliff face, and we could see this guy now. He was up to his neck in water, and he was unconscious. The seas had really built, big heavy seas were rolling in, and the guy said, well, we can't go out there because they'd die of hypothermia within a few minutes. I said, look, I've got a dry suit on, what's called an immersion suit. I can go in the water and I'll be fine. So I said, put a rope around me and I'll go across. But I'll go and I can't get to the survivor because there's a body in the way. So anyway, I'll go and recover that. So they put a rope on me. I went into the water and I made my way on this rope through all these big seas crashing over me. Anyway, I got to the guy that was stranded on this knot, and I clipped his body onto my belt and gave a thumb up, and the mountain rescue guys pulled the 2 of us back. I was holding him above my head, and we got back to the ledge and they took this guy off, and I said, look, I'm going to go back and get the survivor now because he's obviously in a bad way. So I set off again 250 yards on this traverse rope. By now the seas are higher and the rope's virtually on level with the sea. So with my weight and everything, I'm under the water most of the way. The waves push me up and I start to breathe and keep going. And I'm going. And as I get further towards the rocks, I'm aching, my arms are aching. And then I hear the noise and I can hear the helicopter coming back. And I'm underwater and I can see the foamy sea above me. And then suddenly the searchlights come on of the helicopter and everything's going on around me. And I break through the waves and I can hear the helicopter above me. Then I go back underwater, but I'm still on my way to this guy. And I get to within about 10 yards of him and then I start being banged against the rocks under the water. And I thought, I can't make this. Then I turned and I saw the guy was unconscious. And I thought, if that was me, I'd want somebody to come and help me. So I persevered and I got to him and I stood up and got to the guy. He was unconscious and his hands were holding onto the rope. And I remember peeling his hands off and all the skin of his hands came off with it. And I said, "You're okay now. We've come to get you." So I hooked him onto my harness on my life jacket. I inflated my life jacket and gave a thumbs up to the mountain rescue team back on the mainland. They could see me. And I went back into the water with the boy. Just before I went into the water, I could see some lights bobbing around in the distance, away about half a mile from me. I thought, well, that must be the Lochinver lifeboat as well. And the helicopter was now lit the whole area with its searchlights. And I thought, well, if something happens to both of us, at least if the helicopter can't get down to get me, the lifeboat will pick us up. And I was very confident that now I've got my life jacket inflated and I got an emergency beacon activated as well that find me. So we went into the water and I'm holding the guy up above me and the mountain rescue team started to pull me across and I'm just holding onto the rope and holding onto the guy. I was virtually underwater all this way. Anyway, after about 5 or 10 minutes, I get to the mainland and they pull me and the survivor out of the water and he's still very much unconscious. They put him in a stretcher, wrap him up in silver foil stuff and all that. We put him on a stretcher and myself and the head of the mountain rescue team then lift this boy on the stretcher. We had to climb about 100 feet up this sheer mountainside with this stretcher. How we did it, I don't know, because the helicopter had now come back and he's got his winchman down, but they'd only got about 200 foot drop on the winch and they couldn't get any lower, and so we had to climb up to his position. So anyway, we got there and the winchman took the stretcher and the guy and lifted them up and shot off back to hospital in Stornoway where the boy survived. And we were there then trapped on this rock ledge, me and the mountain rescue team leader, snow coming onto our faces, and we just sat there and it was just unbelievable. What amazing footage that would have made. No camera.
Only you, Paul, would think, if only I'd had my camera. I have to ask you, what keeps you curious? What's your next project? Because you must always be thinking, what can I do next? What's next?
Yeah, well, I'm trying to write this book. I'm hoping we can do a film about 9/11, because you probably don't know, I don't know if you've read something there, but there's a sting in the tail here. So after that awful day on September the 11th, all of us that escaped, the firefighters and other first responders, thought, wow, we got away with this. We've survived where others have all perished. And that was fine. 20 years on from 9/11, those of us that were there started to develop medical conditions. Some people who got cancers and various other serious medical injuries, medical problems, and started to die. And they found that the ash cloud, that big cloud that consumed everybody that morning, has affected all of us that were there. And many of the officers that were with me, the firefighters that day, have actually died from various complaints brought on from inhaling this stuff. 2.5 years ago, I went to hospital for an x-ray on something minor. And one of the consultants found that I got this shadow on my lungs. And they diagnosed eventually that I got pulmonary fibrosis. And they said, it's terminal. You've got 5 years to live. So I've become one of the casualties as well. And they're saying now that by the 25th anniversary, which is in September next year, 2026, over 10,000 people that consumed that dust cloud will have died. So I'm looking at trying to get the television companies to let us make a film about all that and my involvement in it and what's happened to all these people that have got these awful diseases. And that story really hasn't been told much, certainly on this side of the Atlantic. So I think that's what I'm going to be doing in the next year, hopefully, if we can get a commission to make that. So it just shows you, yes, you might get away with something, but eventually it catches up on you. But my consultants, I keep having regular checks and everything's hunky-dory at the moment with me, so keep my fingers crossed. I'm going to be all right for quite a while yet. So. But I keep working, I like doing what I'm doing. I'm getting old now, but I enjoy every minute of the day. I like talking to you and others and writing books and appearing on television programs and doing my own things. I do fine art photography and prints and exhibitions and all that sort of thing. I enjoy it. I never want to retire. I don't want to sit back in a chair and just look out of the window. I enjoy my job. I'm in a position where I've got a career. I had a career that's absolutely amazing. If you like your job and the work that you do, keep doing it. And I do, and I enjoy every minute of it, and I'll keep doing that until everything catches up on me. So I hope that's not for a while yet, and I've got plenty of time to enjoy life with my family and son and grandchildren and everything that goes with all that, nice things in life. But I'm still chasing things. If I see something, what's going on? The curiosity is still there. So everywhere I go, it all happens unbelievably. It's quite amazing.
My sincerest of thanks this week to Paul Berriff, and I can't wait to spend more time talking with you, Paul. Actually, walking and talking. I feel a special coming on. And, that's it for today. So if you can't wait until next Friday and you want to walk a little further together, then that's what the Extra Mile edition is all about. Now, today, it's all about clickbait. That's the reflection, anyway. I also have a chat with Mally Davis, my friend Mally of the Trees. We haven't spoken for a while on the show. I'm clearly getting withdrawal problems. So Mally will be on the Extra Mile. Just a few closing thoughts before the PS. My sincere thanks to you if you are or you're about to become an Extra Miler. We'll keep building this wonderful community of kindness together. A safe place to share our thoughts about this thing we love, photographing and walking. A few mentions for those who smooth the voyage. You know Neil Ford, he who looks after IT and after me, pretty much. My thanks to Andrea Gilpin, who keeps a watchful eye over Instagram, as does Kelly Mitchell for Facebook, to Kelvin Brown, who's at the helm of the Flickr group, and to Michael Brennan, who compiles the music of the show onto a Spotify playlist. Right, a postscript for the show. Today, something about resilience. Maya Angelou survived trauma, racism, and poverty. She became one of the most influential writers and voices for dignity and resilience, and we've certainly featured her words here before. And I thought this PS really does suit the conversation today with Paul. You may not control all the events that happen to you, but you can decide not to be reduced by them.
What's there to hold in the light of this moon? My mind keeps searching, but my heart decides. Thoughts can be cruel, they're not mine to hold. The space unravels when you let
The Photo Walk is a Loading Zone production.